Imagine being shot down over enemy territory, miles behind German lines, with no food, no water, and no chance of rescue. Now imagine your only escape route is stealing an enemy fighter plane you have never flown, with a cockpit labeled entirely in a language you cannot read, surrounded by hundreds of armed soldiers who will execute you on sight. This is not fiction. This is the story of First Lieutenant Bruce Carr, a 20-year-old American pilot who did the impossible in November 1944. What you are about to hear defies every logical outcome, every probability of survival, and every rule of engagement in aerial warfare. If you have not already, please subscribe to this channel, and write in the comments below which city, state, or country you are watching from. I promise you will want to stay until the very end of this story, because what happens next is beyond belief. The sky over Czechoslovakia on the morning of November 2, 1944, is torn apart by the sound of 12 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines screaming at full combat power. First Lieutenant Bruce Carr pulls his P-51 Mustang into a steep climbing turn, his gloved hand firm on the stick, his breath shallow inside the rubber oxygen mask clamped to his face. Below him, the earth is a patchwork of dark forests and pale fields stitched together by roads that twist like veins through occupied Europe. He is 20 years old. He has been in combat for months. His reflexes are sharp, but his body is tired in the way that only sustained violence can make a young man tired. Around him, 11 other Mustangs knife through the cold air in a loose formation, each aircraft a gleaming sliver of American engineering, sent deep into the Third Reich to kill anything that moves. The mission brief was simple: escort the heavy bombers to their target, protect them from Luftwaffe interceptors, destroy any German fighters that try to interfere, return home. But combat is never simple. The bombers have already turned for home, trailing thin contrails across the winter sky, and the fighter pilots are hunting. They are prowling the countryside for targets of opportunity, anything worth the ammunition still loaded in their wing guns. Carr scans the horizon through the curved plexiglass canopy, searching for movement, for the glint of sunlight on metal, for the dark silhouette of an enemy aircraft crossing his field of vision. His Mustang responds to every input with precision. The control stick is an extension of his hand. The throttle is a lever of controlled violence. He has flown this machine through storm clouds and tracer fire, through fear and adrenaline, and it has brought him home every time. Until now. The first explosion is a sound and a sensation combined, a metallic crack that punches through the cockpit like a fist through glass. The Mustang shudders violently, and Carr feels the control stick jerk in his hand. Anti-aircraft fire. The Germans call it flak, and it fills the sky with bursts of shrapnel designed to shred aluminum and flesh. He does not see the gun emplacement. He does not see the crew that fired the shell. He only knows that something has gone catastrophically wrong. The engine note changes instantly, dropping from a smooth roar to a ragged coughing sound that sends ice through his chest. Black smoke begins pouring from the cowling, thick and oily, streaming past the canopy in a dark ribbon that tells him everything he needs to know. The coolant system is destroyed. The engine is dying. He has seconds, maybe minutes, before the Merlin seizes completely or catches fire. He keys the radio, his voice tight but controlled. "Red Leader, this is Red 7, I am hit. Engine is gone, I am going down." The response crackles back through his headset, distorted by static and distance, but he barely hears it. His hands are already moving through the emergency procedures burned into his muscle memory by training and repetition. Mixture to idle cutoff. Fuel selector to off. Magnetos off. He does not want the engine to ignite while he is still strapped inside this machine. The Mustang is losing altitude fast, the nose dropping despite his efforts to keep it level. The airspeed is bleeding away. The controls are growing sluggish. He knows what comes next. He has trained for this moment in classrooms and simulators, but training and reality are separated by a gulf that cannot be measured in words. He reaches up and yanks the canopy release. The plexiglass slides back with a rush of freezing wind that tears at his flight suit and fills the cockpit with noise. The slipstream is a physical force, a wall of air moving at 200 miles per hour, and it slams into him with enough violence to make his eyes water. He disconnects his oxygen hose. He unbuckles his harness. He braces his boots against the seat and pushes himself up and out into the void. The separation is instant and brutal. One moment he is inside the machine, surrounded by instruments and armor and the illusion of control. The next moment he is falling through empty air with nothing between him and the ground except gravity and a parachute packed by a stranger in a factory thousands of miles away. He pulls the ripcord. The canopy deploys with a sharp crack and the opening shock nearly breaks his ribs. The straps dig into his shoulders and thighs as his descent slows from a terminal plunge to a controlled drift. The silence is surreal. The engine noise is gone. The wind has softened to a whisper. He hangs suspended beneath a circle of white silk, swaying slightly, and for the first time he looks down at the land below. It is enemy territory, German-occupied Czechoslovakia. Hundreds of miles behind the front lines, he is alone. He is unarmed except for a sidearm and a survival knife. He has no food, no water, no radio, and no plan except to reach Allied lines on foot before the Germans find him. The ground rises to meet him faster than he expects. He sees a field, a line of trees, a dirt road cutting through the landscape. He pulls on the risers to steer away from the road, but the parachute responds slowly, grudgingly. He hits the earth hard, rolling through tall grass that smells of decay and wet soil. The impact drives the air from his lungs and sends pain shooting through his ankle. He lies still for a moment, listening, his heart pounding so hard he can feel it in his throat. There are no voices, no shouts, no sound of boots running toward him. He gathers the parachute quickly, bundles it into a rough pile, and buries it under a fallen log and a layer of leaves. It is a poor hiding place, but it is the best he can manage. He checks his compass. West. He needs to move west, toward the advancing Allied armies, toward safety, toward home. He begins walking. The first day is the hardest. His ankle throbs with every step, swelling inside his flight boot until the leather feels like a tourniquet. He stays off the roads, moving through fields and forests where the terrain is rough and the cover is better. He sees farmhouses in the distance, thin columns of smoke rising from chimneys, but he does not approach them. He does not know who lives there or what language they speak or whether they will help him or turn him over to the Germans for a reward. He passes a village in the late afternoon, skirting the edge of the settlement while dogs bark in the distance. He freezes behind a stone wall, his hand on the grip of his pistol, but no one comes. The barking fades. He keeps moving. Hunger arrives on the second day, a hollow, gnawing sensation that starts in his stomach and spreads through his entire body. He has not eaten since before the mission, and his body is burning through its reserves at a catastrophic rate. He finds a stream and drinks until his stomach aches, but water does nothing for the weakness creeping into his limbs. He tries to forage, searching for anything edible, but it is November and the land is barren. There are no berries, no nuts, no crops left unharvested in the fields. He considers trying to steal food from a farm, but the risk is too great. A single mistake, a single encounter with a civilian loyal to the Reich, and he will be handed over to the Gestapo. He has heard the stories. He knows what happens to downed Allied pilots captured by the secret police. Interrogation, torture, execution, sometimes in that order, sometimes not. On the third day, he sees German soldiers for the first time. They are moving along a road in a column, their uniforms field gray and mud-stained, their rifles slung across their backs. He crouches in a drainage ditch, half submerged in freezing water, and watches them pass less than 50 meters away. They are talking and smoking, their voices carrying clearly in the cold air, but he does not understand the words. He counts them. 15 men, enough to kill him 100 times over if they find him. He waits until they are out of sight, then crawls out of the ditch and moves in the opposite direction, his body shaking uncontrollably from cold and fear. The nights are worse than the days. The temperature drops below freezing, and he has no shelter except whatever he can improvise from branches and leaves. He cannot risk a fire. The light would be visible for miles, a beacon for anyone searching for him. He curls into a ball beneath a makeshift lean-to and tries to sleep, but sleep is impossible. His body is too cold, too hungry, too flooded with adrenaline. He drifts in and out of consciousness, his mind playing tricks on him, conjuring sounds that are not there. Footsteps, voices, the metallic click of a rifle bolt being drawn back. He wakes with a start every few minutes, his hand reaching for his pistol, his breath coming in short gasps. By the fourth day, he is delirious. His thoughts are fragmented, looping back on themselves in strange patterns. He thinks about his family. He thinks about the other pilots in his squadron, wondering if they made it home, if they think he is dead. He thinks about the Mustang, imagining it burning in a field somewhere, a twisted monument to his failure. He wonders if this is how it ends, not in a dogfight or a crash, but from starvation and exposure in a frozen forest in the middle of nowhere. He keeps walking because there is nothing else to do. West, always west. And then he sees the airfield. It is late afternoon when he crests a low hill and looks down into a shallow valley. The airfield is there, sprawled across the landscape like a geometric scar. Runways, hangars, control buildings, and aircraft, German aircraft. He counts them slowly, his eyes moving from one machine to the next. Messerschmitt fighters, Junkers transports, and there near the edge of the field a Focke-Wulf 190. The 190 is a brute of an aircraft, a radial-engine fighter built for speed and firepower. He has fought them before, dodged their cannon fire, watched them burn when his own guns found their mark. But now, seeing one on the ground, intact and unguarded, a thought begins to form in his mind. A thought so reckless, so insane, that he almost laughs out loud. He could steal it. The idea is madness. He has never flown a German aircraft. He does not speak German. He does not know the cockpit layout or the engine start procedure or the handling characteristics. The airfield is crawling with Luftwaffe personnel. There are guards, mechanics, pilots, all of them armed, all of them trained to kill intruders on sight. The chances of success are so small they barely exist. But the alternative is to keep walking, to keep starving, to keep hoping he can cross hundreds of miles of enemy territory on foot without being captured. And he is so tired, so hungry, so far past the point of rational thought that stealing an enemy fighter plane actually seems like the better option. He watches the airfield for hours, memorizing the patrol patterns, the timing of the guard changes, the rhythm of activity around the aircraft. He notices that the 190 is parked away from the main cluster of buildings, isolated, almost forgot. He notices that the guards seem bored, their movements slow and predictable. He notices that as the sun sets and darkness falls, the activity on the field decreases. Fewer people, fewer lights, fewer chances of being seen. He waits until the middle of the night. The moon is a thin crescent, barely enough light to see by, and that is exactly what he needs. He moves toward the airfield in a low crouch, staying in the shadows, his boots silent on the frozen ground. His heart is hammering so hard he is certain someone will hear it, but he keeps moving. He reaches the perimeter fence, a simple barrier of wire and wooden posts, and slips through a gap near a drainage culvert. He is inside. He is on an active Luftwaffe airfield in the middle of occupied Czechoslovakia, and if anyone sees him, he is a dead man. The 190 is exactly where he saw it, dark and silent, its propeller blades black against the night sky. He approaches slowly, every sense alert, expecting at any moment to hear a shout or the crack of a rifle. But there is nothing. No sound except the wind and the distant hum of generators. He reaches the aircraft and places his hand on the fuselage, feeling the cold metal under his palm. It is real. It is here. And if he can figure out how to start it, it might just save his life. He climbs onto the wing and opens the canopy. The hinges creak softly and he freezes, listening, but no alarm is raised. He slides into the cockpit and pulls the canopy closed behind him. The interior is completely unfamiliar. The instruments are labeled in German. The switches and levers are arranged in a layout he does not recognize. He cannot see anything clearly in the darkness, and he does not dare use a light. So he does the only thing he can. He explores the cockpit by touch, his fingers moving over every surface, every control, every knob and button. He memorizes the shape of the throttle, the position of the mixture control, the feel of the fuel selector. He finds what he thinks is the magneto switch. He finds what might be the primer pump. He builds a mental map of the cockpit, piece by piece, knowing that when dawn comes, he will have one chance to get this right. The hours pass with agonizing slowness. He sits in the cockpit, shivering, rehearsing the start procedure in his mind over and over. His hands move through the motions in the dark, invisible rehearsals of a performance that will either save his life or end it. He thinks about the German pilot who flew this aircraft last, wondering where that man is now, whether he is asleep in a barracks 100 meters away, whether he will wake up in time to stop what is about to happen. The sky begins to light. Dawn is coming, and with it the moment of decision. He takes a deep breath and begins the engine start sequence. Fuel on, mixture rich, throttle cracked open. His hand finds the starter switch and he presses it. For a terrible moment, nothing happens. The engine is silent. He has failed. But then, with a cough and a shudder, the BMW radial engine roars to life. The propeller begins to turn, slowly at first, then faster, the blades becoming a blur. The cockpit fills with noise and vibration, and he knows that everyone on the airfield can hear it. He has seconds before they realize what is happening. He releases the brakes and shoves the throttle forward. The 190 lurches into motion, rolling across the grass toward the runway. He does not know the takeoff procedure. He does not know the rotation speed or the best climb angle. He only knows that he needs to get this machine into the air before the Germans start shooting. The aircraft accelerates, faster and faster, the tail coming up as the airspeed builds. He can see figures running toward him now, men shouting and pointing, some of them raising rifles. A bullet cracks past the canopy and then another. He pulls back on the stick and the 190 lifts off the ground, climbing steeply, the engine howling at full power. He is airborne. He is flying a German fighter plane over enemy territory with no flight plan, no navigation aids, and no idea if he can land this thing without killing himself. But he is airborne, and for the first time in days, he feels something other than fear. He feels exhilaration. He feels control. He pushes the nose down and levels off just above the treetops, flying as low as he dares to stay below the German radar and anti-aircraft defenses. The landscape rushes past beneath him in a green and brown blur. He does not know exactly where he is, but he knows which direction is west, and he points the nose of the 190 toward home. The flight across enemy territory is a test of nerve and skill that pushes him to the absolute edge of his abilities. The 190 handles differently than the Mustang, heavier on the controls, more responsive to throttle inputs. The engine sounds wrong. the instruments read in unfamiliar units, and every few minutes he has to remind himself that he is not flying his own aircraft. He navigates by landmarks and instinct, following rivers and roads, avoiding cities and known anti-aircraft positions. He sees other aircraft in the distance, dark shapes crossing the sky, but he does not know if they are friendly or hostile, so he stays low and stays fast. And then finally he crosses the front lines. He knows he is over Allied territory when he sees the first American convoy moving along a road below, trucks and jeeps and tanks heading east. Relief floods through him, so intense it almost makes him dizzy. He is safe. He has made it. But then the anti-aircraft guns open fire. The Americans see a Focke-Wulf 190 with German markings flying at low altitude, and they do what they are trained to do. They try to kill it. Tracer rounds arc up toward him, bright lines of fire that crisscross the sky. He jinks hard, throwing the 190 into a violent turn, trying to evade the barrage. He is being shot at by his own side, and there is no way to communicate, no way to tell them that the pilot inside this enemy aircraft is an American. He spots the airfield where his squadron is based and aims for it, keeping the throttle wide open, staying as low as possible. The runway appears ahead, a gray strip carved into the earth, and he lines up for landing. But he does not know the landing gear extension procedure. He does not know where the hydraulic controls are or how to lower the gear manually. He fumbles with the switches, his hands shaking, and nothing happens. The gear will not extend. He is out of time and out of options. He is going to have to belly land this aircraft, and he is going to have to do it while American gunners are still shooting at him. He chops the throttle and pulls the nose up, bleeding off airspeed, trying to time the touchdown so the aircraft settles onto the runway as gently as possible. The 190 drops like a stone, the belly making contact with the concrete in a screech of tearing metal and a shower of sparks. He holds the stick back, keeping the tail down, riding the aircraft as it skids down the runway in a cloud of smoke and debris. The propeller blades shatter against the ground, throwing fragments in every direction. The canopy cracks. The engine mounts tear-free, and then, finally, mercifully, the aircraft stops. He sits in the cockpit for a moment, stunned, unable to believe he is still alive. Then he hears voices shouting, the sound of boots running toward the wreckage. He pops the canopy and climbs out, his legs weak, his hands trembling. He drops to the ground and raises his arms above his head. There are soldiers everywhere, rifles pointed at him, faces twisted with confusion and anger. They see a man in a torn flight suit climbing out of a German fighter, and they do not know what to make of it. Someone shouts for him to get on the ground. Someone else yells for military police. And then, cutting through the chaos, a voice he recognizes. His commanding officer, pushing through the crowd, staring at him with an expression of complete disbelief. "Carr, is that you?" "Yes, sir," he says, his voice hoarse. "It is me." The room goes silent, and then slowly the pieces fall into place. The missing pilot, the lost Mustang, the days behind enemy lines, and now the impossible return in a stolen enemy aircraft. The soldiers lower their rifles. The military police step back, and First Lieutenant Bruce Carr, 20 years old, half-starved, exhausted beyond measure, allows himself to collapse. The captured Focke-Wulf 190 is taken away by intelligence officers who descend on the base within hours of the landing. They want to examine the aircraft to study its systems, to understand its capabilities. Carr is debriefed extensively, answering questions about the theft, the flight, the cockpit layout, every detail recorded and analyzed. There are some who doubt his story, some who think it is too incredible to be true, too much like a Hollywood fantasy. The records are incomplete. The details are murky. And over the years, historians will debate whether the event happened exactly as Carr described it, or whether time and memory and the nature of war have embellished the truth. But those who were there, who saw the wrecked German fighter on the runway, who saw the pilot climb out with his hands raised. They know that something extraordinary happened on that November morning. Whether it was exactly as the legend tells it, or something close enough to be believed, the core truth remains. A man refused to surrender. He refused to give up. And when every logical path led to death or capture, he found a way home. Carr returns to combat. His injuries heal. His strength returns. And on a mission not long after, he does something that cements his place in the history of fighter aviation. He shoots down 5 German aircraft in a single day, achieving what pilots call ace-in-a-day status. 5 confirmed kills in one mission. It is a rare accomplishment, a mark of skill and aggression and the kind of calculated violence that defines air combat. He survives the war. He continues serving in the years that follow, flying combat missions in Korea and Vietnam, adapting to new aircraft and new enemies and new ways of killing. He rises through the ranks, his record accumulating decorations and commendations, each one a marker of valor and competence, and the ruthless efficiency expected of a professional military officer. He retires as a full colonel in the United States Air Force, a rank that represents decades of service and the respect of his peers. But no matter what else he accomplishes, no matter how many missions he flies or how many medals he earns, the story that follows him is always the same. The story of the pilot who stole an enemy fighter and flew it home. The story that seems too impossible to be real and yet refuses to be forgotten. Bruce Carr dies in 1998 at the age of 74. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery, among the ranks of America's honored dead. His grave is a simple marker, a name and dates carved into white stone, but the story beneath that stone is anything but simple. It is a story of desperation and ingenuity, of risk and reward, of a young man who looked at an impossible situation and decided to do the impossible anyway. Whether every detail is exactly as it happened, or whether time has smoothed the edges and sharpened the drama, does not diminish what the story represents. It represents the refusal to accept defeat. It represents the human capacity to adapt, to improvise, to find a way forward when there is no way forward. And it represents something that cannot be taught or trained or ordered into existence. It represents will. The historians who question the literal truth of the story are not wrong to do so. War is chaos. Memory is imperfect. Records are lost. And men who survive extraordinary events sometimes reshape those events in the telling, not out of dishonesty, but because trauma and time distort the past in ways we cannot fully control. But the historians who focus only on verification and documentation miss something essential. They miss the reason the story endures. It endures because it speaks to something deep in the human experience. The belief that even when everything is lost, even when the odds are impossible, there is still a choice. The choice to keep moving, the choice to keep fighting, the choice to refuse the easy answer of surrender. Bruce Carr made that choice in a frozen field in Czechoslovakia in November 1944. He made it again in the cockpit of an enemy aircraft he did not know how to fly. He made it every time he climbed into a fighter plane for the next 3 decades, knowing that each flight could be his last. And whether the details of his most famous flight are exactly as remembered, or whether they are something close enough to truth to be meaningful, the fact remains that he lived a life defined by that choice. A life defined by motion, by action, by the refusal to quit. That is the story worth remembering. Not just what he did, but what it means. Not just the impossible flight, but the principle beneath it. That survival is not guaranteed. That safety is an illusion. That the only real question when everything falls apart is not whether you will be afraid, but what you will do with that fear. Will you let it paralyze you, Or will you let it push you forward into the unknown, into the dangerous, into the place where the impossible becomes possible simply because there is no other choice? The answer is written in the sky over Czechoslovakia, in the cockpit of a stolen fighter, in the wreckage on a runway, and in the grave at Arlington. The answer is that you move. You keep moving. You do not stop. You do not surrender. You find a way, or you make one. And if you are very lucky and very skilled and very determined, you might just make it home. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a like. I would love to hear from you in the comments. What part of Bruce Carr's story affected you the most? Was it the moment he decided to steal the aircraft, the terrifying flight across enemy lines, or the landing under fire from his own side? And please, let me know where you are watching from. Write your city, state, or country in the comments below. These stories of courage and sacrifice deserve to be remembered, and your engagement helps ensure they reach more people who need to hear them. Thank you for watching until the end.